Hey everybody, this is John Fenn, Church Without Walls International, CWOWI.org. We are a house church network. Please visit our website, sign up for my weekly thoughts and my monthly newsletters. The weekly thoughts are a short teaching that come out every Friday on a variety of subjects. And that's where we put announcements about where we'll be, conferences, Zoom meetings, things of that nature. Plus, it's really good balanced teaching on a variety of subjects. So, CWOWI.org. All right, I want to get right into it today. I want to talk about our preexistence in the mind of God and an experience I had of visitation with the Lord. I was in a village called Laguna de Sanchez in the mountains of Mexico, some ways outside of Saltillo, Mexico. And my missionary friend was a man named Carl, and there was a visiting woman from the U.S. named Dora who was interpreting for us. And we were to have dinner before I ministered in a small church that evening. And so Carl and Dora went on ahead into the little village while I was walking outside the village on a rocky road. I was looking down so I wouldn't twist my ankle because the rocks were very large. And my spirit man started leaping for joy. Kind of like, when you're nervous before speaking before a group or something like that, except this is in my spirit. It was just leaping with joy, like excitement, and I didn't know what that was. And I was looking down at the rocks as I was walking and thinking, what is that? What is that? And then it just came up out of my spirit. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about it. It said, it's Jesus. And I looked up, and Jesus was standing there about 15 feet, which would be about 4.5 meters away from me, right in the middle of the road. This was a pedestrian road. This was to get to the fields and crops and everything, so there weren't any vehicles on it. And it was just this rocky road, and suddenly Jesus was there. And I looked to my left, and there was Carl and Dora walking up the road ahead of me. And I'm going to fast forward to a couple things before I don't need to share the whole vision at this point, visitation, what happened. But at one point, I thought Carl and Dora need to know that Jesus is here. When you're in the spirit, you say stupid things because it seems so completely natural. It's like Peter in the Mount of Transfiguration in Luke chapter 9 saying, it's great that Moses and Elijah are here. Let's build some tents. Let's have a camp out. And it just sounds so normal at the time, but you're in the spirit, and that's why. It's silly in retrospect. But, for me, I was thinking, I need to tell Carl and Dora that Jesus is here. And I looked to my left, and as I started to do that, light came out from the Lord, just like a curtain, just all around him, just light just started expanding from him. And about the time I was going to go, Carl, like that, the light just covered up everything. And the trees disappeared, the floor, the rocks that I was standing on disappeared. Everything disappeared except me and Jesus. We were just encased in this light. And I looked at him, and in his eyes there was such love. It was such I just wanted to run and jump, and like in a hammock of love. There was such love coming between him and me, and I was just absorbing it. And it was like I realized there was nothing that I had done. He just loves me. And suddenly, and this is the part I want to share, I'm fast forwarding to this. And so I was suddenly pulled into his mind. It was like I was looking into his eyes, those deep eyes full of love. And it was like I was just pulled into them and boom, into his mind. And I was flying through outer space. I was looking at galaxies and everything. And the first thing that hit me is it's not like Star Trek or Star Wars where suddenly you get closer to a star or something. The distances were so vast. And I was there in space, and I somehow intuitively, I was somehow looking for some place that he was not present. And I remember my eyes were so good. I could see as far away as I needed, as I wanted. And I was looking as far away, just keep going space and space and space, and more galaxies and star clusters and clouds of stuff and everything like that. And I, like a rolling wave coming out of space, I heard his voice, and it was like an ocean wave. It was like rolling. It had this noise and this presence about it. And he said, "I am here." And it came out of, however distant my eyes could look, this voice of the Lord came from further away than that. And he said, "I am here." And the same thing happened. I looked down in my lower right, and the same thing, trying to find as far as I could into deep, deep space, and still further out than my vision could ever see, his voice was coming to me like a rolling wave. "I am here." And suddenly I was back standing before him, just 15 feet, just 4.5 meters away. And I said, oh Lord, I said, you are worthy to be worshiped. You are worthy. You are the creator. You are worthy of all worship. And then I paused and I thought, and things started running through my mind like 2 Timothy 1:9 that says that he gave us our salvation according to his grace and his purpose, which was given us before times eternal. And I thought of Jeremiah 1:5, before you were in your mother's womb, I knew you. And I thought of Romans chapter 8 and verse 32. Hebrews chapter 1 was the first thing that came to mind, and verses 1 through 3, my favorite passages in all the Bible. That God spoke in many times, in many ways to the fathers, but in these last days he's spoken to us by his Son, or through his Son, who he appointed heir of all things, and by whom also he made the worlds, or the universe, the ages. That the Father God used his Son to create the whole universe. And I had just been flying through there and realized that he is the creator. And I'm standing there. And I'm realizing that. And I said, oh Lord, you are the creator. You're worthy to be worshiped and glorified. And I looked at him and I said, and it suddenly hit me. I said, because I saw the creation of the universe and realized that Romans 8:32, that the Father God, who did not spare his only Son, but he gave him to us, how shall he not, along with his Son, then give us all things? Because the Son was used to create the universe. Every sun, every star, the moon, the planet, every animal, every plant. The Father used his Son to create that, and then he gave us his Son. So if you have the Son, you have the universe. And all of this was hitting me all at once, just like a revelation, just fireworks going off inside of me. Oh Lord, you are worthy to be worshiped. You are worthy to be glorified. And I said, I'm a product of your imagination, aren't I? You thought me up. I realized that I was part of the creation. In all the stars and all those galaxies, I was part of that creation. Genesis 1:1 hit me. Genesis 1:1 is about the creation of time, space, and matter. All three came into existence. In the beginning, that's time. That's the creation of time. You don't have time if you don't have a physical universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There's space and time. And matter. Space, time, and matter. All there in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created time when he created a physical universe. And so I came from that. And I said, I'm a product of your imagination. You thought me up. And he said, that's right, I did. He smiled. He said, that's right, I did. And then it hit me. And I said, you spent the same amount of time thinking about everyone who has ever lived or ever will live as you did on me long before the physical universe was ever created. And he smiled and he said, that's right, I did. And so I realized he spent the same amount of time equal on all of us, every single one of us, before anything was ever created. People get that wrong. They think we had a pre-existence with God. No, only in his mind. Only when and in fact, I asked the Lord, I thought about the inequalities of life, and I won't go into detail right there of what I was thinking, but I had a woman that I knew named Maria. I was an associate pastor at the time, and there was a woman in our church named Maria who had two, a boy and a girl, twins, a boy and a girl, teenagers, and they were trouble. And she was a nervous, chain-smoking, spirit-filled believer. Just the police were over at their house. I mean, she was just having a hard time raising these kids by herself. And as associate pastor, I was over there all the time helping and to calm the kids down and everything like that and mediate there. And then I thought of another friend of mine who was born wealthy. Very wealthy, had it easy. Both claimed to be Christians, but one was kind of a user and had it easy, and the other one was really, really tough. And I talked to the Lord about the inequalities. How could you do that? And he said this. He said, remember, I created all things, and all things were made by me and for me. And for everything to work properly, it has to be in me. And he said, when I thought each person up, I looked through the corridors of time at their lives, and I gifted them. He said, I graced them with everything they would need in life as they depended on me, for all things must be in me. And for everything to work properly, it must be in me. And so he talked about Maria, and he said, so when I saw her life, her difficult life, I graced her with everything that she would need as she leaned on me and depended on me. And with my other friend, he said, and I looked at his life and how easy it is at this point, and I looked at the grace that was needed, and I gifted him and graced him with what he needed to get through life, so that each person has to depend 100% on me. So from my eyes, it is equal. It is equality because each has to depend on me. Anyway, this is part one. I'll get into part two next week. But I want you to know that you were thought up. You're a product of the Lord's mind, and yes, in the preexistence of time, in the mind of God, He thought you up, and He graced you with everything that you would need to get through today, to get through this week, to get through this month and this year. He graced you with everything as you depend on Him. All things were created by Him and for Him. And for everything to work properly, it has to be in Him. And our lives as Christians is largely rearranging our lives to line up with Him and His ways as we renew our minds and we set our bodies, our lives to walk in His ways. And it's a rearrangement of things. So much of it isn't the devil after you. It's that you walked with the devil, you had things out of order, and there's turmoil as things get placed in order, but it does happen. He looks at the big picture. He looks at the ages to come. All right, I hope this has been a blessing. God bless.